It was January 25th, 1943, and fighter pilot Joe Foss from Marine Fighting Squadron 121 had just spotted a formation of over 100 Japanese bombers and Zeros approaching the island of Guadalcanal. With only 12 men under his command, Foss knew he was outgunned and outnumbered, but he had to do what he could with what he had at his disposal. Piloting a Grumman F4F Wildcat, a heavily armored but slow aircraft that was the complete opposite of the reliable Mitsubishi Zero, Foss and his men bravely went after the enemy force to tear it apart. But as the skirmish broke out, the Japanese pilots realized the Wildcat was a rugged yet extremely resistant fighter that could take a real beating before exploding into pieces, and it was not going to be an easy fight. Practice makes perfect. Grumman Aircraft joined the fighter development industry by introducing the two-seat Grumman FF biplane, which became the first U.S. Navy fighter with retractable landing gear. Then, in 1935, Grumman and Brewster were pitched against each other to develop the next U.S. Navy carrier-borne fighter. During the competition, Brewster introduced the F-2A Buffalo, a no-frills single-engine monoplane, while Grumman pitched the G-16, or XF-41, a biplane fighter. The U.S. Navy ultimately settled for the Buffalo fighter. However, Grumman decided to revisit its G-16, or XF-42 design to improve it, resulting in the G-18. This model featured a standard monoplane wing arrangement. The U.S. Navy then approved the production of a prototype, which first flew in 1937. It was powered by an engine with over 1,050 horsepower, but was still slower than the U.S. Navy required. Even so, Grumman kept insisting and developed the G-36, or XF-4F3. This aircraft featured a larger wing with squared-off ends and a more powerful Pratt & Whitney XR-1830-76 engine with a two-stage supercharger. The XF-4F3 had its maiden flight in February of 1939 and finally convinced the U.S. Navy to produce it, turning into the first generation of F4F Wildcats. Rugged design. The produced Grumman F4F3 had a length of 28 feet, a wingspan of 38 feet, and a height of 11 feet. Its empty weight was 4,908 pounds and could go up to 7,423 pounds fully armed. Standard armament comprised 4 M2 Browning or 4 Darn machine guns, while its secondary armament included 2 100-pound bombs or 58-gallon drop tanks under the wings. The second aircraft variant, the F4F4, was armed with 6 M2 Browning MGs and either a bomb load of 2 250-pound bombs or 58-gallon drop tanks for deep operations that required more range. The aircraft had a rugged design, and its engine was encased in the forward portion of the fuselage with an exposed air-cooled radial opening. In addition, the forward windscreen was fixed, and the aft piece comprised 2 rear sliding rails. Also, the cockpit was placed in a Razorback-style upper fuselage, restricting the pilot's rear view. The most potent engine employed by the model was the Wright Cyclone R-1820-56, which generated over 1,350 horsepower and allowed the aircraft to reach a speed of up to 332 miles per hour. Plus, its approximate range was 900 miles, with a service ceiling of 34,000 feet. When the war broke out in Europe in September of 1939, the French and British militaries ordered over 200 modified models to use against the Luftwaffe. The main differences with the American variant were the machine guns, the engine, and the instrument panel. The British dubbed the aircraft the Martlet Mk1 and would employ it with several upgrades until the war's end. Most of them would serve in the Far East against the Empire of Japan. The aircraft entered service with the U.S. Navy in 1940 with an initial order of over 80 aircraft. And in April of 1941, the folding wing version was introduced into service, earning the iconic nickname Wildcat. Tours of duty. Some models from the Marines' VMF-211 squadron were at Pearl Harbor during the Japanese attack and engaged enemy Zeros with desperation, paying a high price. 9 Zeros were destroyed, but the Japanese retaliated a day later during the defense of Wake Island. Captain Henry Elrod, and 11 additional Marine fighter pilots desperately defended the island aboard their Wildcats. Elrod eventually claimed 2 victories over 2 Mitsubishi G3M bombers and attacked the destroyer Kisaragi with the support of 2 Wildcats. In the middle of intense anti-aircraft fire and a dozen hostile warplanes around him, the pilot released 2 bombs that penetrated the enemy's deck, resulting in secondary explosions that sank Kisaragi. Besides his heroic performance aboard his battered Wildcat, Captain Elrod was also a rifleman, and he lost his life on December 22nd while defending Wake Island in furious hand-to-hand combat against the Japanese. He was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor in 1946. Pitched against the Zero. The swift Japanese Mitsubishi Zero significantly outclassed the Wildcat's performance, but there was one unique feature that made the American aircraft superior to its counterpart: its rugged design and solid construction. It may have been slow, heavy, and ungraceful when it came to maneuverability and speed. Still, the Wildcat made up for its defects in strength and resistance to the elements, and most importantly, enemy aircraft fire. The Wildcat was a .50 caliber bullet sponge that could continue fighting even when it had already taken a beating by Japanese Zeros. Its armor and self-sealing fuel tanks proved a remarkable advantage, as the Zero was designed to be light, agile, and highly maneuverable at the cost of protection and resistance. Legendary Japanese ace Saburo Sakai was impressed by the Wildcat's tremendous strength and wrote about a particular encounter with one. Quote, "For some strange reason, even after I had poured about 500 or 600 rounds of ammunition directly into the Grumman, the airplane did not fall, but kept on flying. I thought this very odd, and closed the distance between the 2 airplanes until I could almost reach out and touch the Grumman. To my surprise, the Grumman's rudder and tail were torn to shreds, looking like an old torn piece of rag." He then added, quote, "A Zero which had taken that many bullets would have been a ball of fire by now." Air tactics. Despite its shortcomings, the Wildcat soon proved a worthy adversary if used to its strengths. The commander of USS Yorktown's fighter group at Midway, Lieutenant Commander James Flatley, concluded that the best way to overcome the Zero was to use the Wildcat's weight and speed to its advantage by gaining as much altitude as possible and then diving at full throttle to then zoom through any hostile aircraft. Flatley explained, quote, "Sooner or later, they had to take you on your terms. If you should be jumped from behind, they had difficulty following, particularly when you rolled at high speed." Commander Jimmy Thatch also envisioned a defensive tactic that allowed Wildcat units to even the odds against the Zero. The Thatch weave consisted of 2 or more Wildcats flying in intersecting flight paths to lure Zeros into focusing on one Allied aircraft. At the same time, the wingman would close in to attack the pursuer from the sides or behind. Such tactics paid off during the battles of the Coral Sea, Midway, and more importantly, Guadalcanal, where several Marine fighter pilots earned their Medal of Honor after facing Saburo Sakai's fighter wing. Evening the odds. On February 20th, 1942, Navy pilot Lieutenant Edward H. O'Hare pulled off an impressive streak after he shot down 6 Japanese bombers over Rabaul Island with the Navy's Fighting Squadron 3, composed of Wildcats. During the feat, O'Hare made several passes over the enemy bomber in just 5 minutes and decimated them with accurate machine gun bursts. His actions earned him a Medal of Honor. Marine pilots from the VMF 223 Squadron also achieved impressive air feats during the Battle of Guadalcanal. During Operation Watchtower, the squadron was dispatched to protect the Marines that landed on the island. Major John Smith, another Medal of Honor hero, downed 4 Zeros aboard his Wildcat while defending Henderson Field from enemy bombardments. 2 months later, his streak had reached 19 enemy aircraft. Around the same time, Squadron leader Robert Bob Gaylor engaged a formation of Japanese bombers, serving as a decoy to lure the Americans into an ambush of over 30 Zero fighter planes. At around 23,000 feet, Gaylor and his wingman engaged more than 10 enemy aircraft. After losing his wingman, Gaylor's Wildcat was battered by machine gun fire, but he kept fighting the numerically superior fighters until his Wildcat was severely damaged. Even so, the rugged fighter managed to glide down towards friendly waters without breaking apart. Gaylor then swam for almost an hour to reach the shores of Florida Island and witness a memorial service held in his honor. The last days. The Marines and the Navy continued testing the Wildcat's design to its limits until late 1943, when it started being replaced by other American aircraft with better range, speed, and maneuverability. However, it was still used by the U.S. until the end of the war in the Pacific, as a photographic reconnaissance platform. Over 7,700 models were produced, of which 1,200 were British martlets employed by the Royal Navy Fleet Air Arm and the Royal Canadian Air Force. And although the Wildcat was not the perfect response against the Zero, the aircraft helped overcome the Japanese air threat during the crucial years of the war in the Pacific. 8 Wildcat pilots went on to earn the Medal of Honor. No other fixed-wing, single-engine aircraft has ever surpassed this feat. Thank you for watching our video. Please like and subscribe to our documentaries channels to find more exciting historical content. And don't forget to hit the bell icon to be notified of our newest videos. Stay tuned for more.